For people listening, this is going to be an amazing podcast. We've been going back and forth with the guests I'm going to bring on in just a second for probably about 20, 30 minutes already. And we're going to do some more time for the listeners. I'm really honored to have this man on. He is a former NBA player. He played from 76 to 86. He's been in NBA front offices in Atlanta. He's been a coach of the Magic, the Lakers, a bunch of other teams, assistant. He's been a head coach for the Magic. And we're going to talk to him. Johnny Davis, former head coach of the Orlando Magic. This is back in that T-Mac era. Grant Hill was there. Juwan Howard was there for a little bit. Dwight was there rather. He's coached a lot of different great players, Iverson, Kobe. So the list goes on and on. Johnny, it's a pleasure finally meeting with you. And I know we've been talking for 30 minutes off air, but I'm grateful to have you on the program today.
It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me. And yes, we got started and we started talking about various different things. So I'm looking forward to the continuation of our conversation. And again, thank you so much for having me.
Johnny, let's start from the beginning. Tell the listeners a little bit about your basketball journey starting out in Detroit, Michigan.
Okay. Yes, I'm from Detroit, Michigan. Started out there playing in the Detroit Public School League, one of the best leagues, of that era at that time. And was All-American as a player in high school and went on to University of Dayton, where, we had a really good team there. An interesting story about the time at the University of Dayton. Mm-hmm. Well, my high school coach, when I was being recruited, UCLA was one of the ones being considered, and they were at the time coming off of the NCAA championship. And so my coach said to me, he said, listen, he said, you're getting a lot of activity from a lot of different schools around the country, UCLA being one of them. He said, my opinion is you should go and play with UCLA. They're the best in the business right now, mm-hmm. and you should consider them strongly. And so I said to the coach, I said, well, coach, number one, it's so far away. I don't know if I want to go that far away from home. I want to kind of be able to get home, and have people, my family, friends, watch me play, etc. Plus, I'm not sure if I'll get a chance to play out there because they just won a championship, collegiate championship. I'm not sure if I would fit into that. They're all set. I mean, they're winning everything. And he looked at me and he said, Johnny, he said, you will play no matter where you go. You're going to play. So, just keep that in mind. But long story short, I went to University of Dayton. In my freshman year, we make the college tournament. We're moving up the line. I think we get to like the Sweet 16, I believe it was. Guess where we had to play? UCLA. The team that I was thinking, oh no, I might not. These guys are so good. I might not ever get off the bench, And so we're playing. And by the way, Bill Walton was on that team. He was a center for UCLA at that time, reigning college player of the year. So we start the game off, and we're playing UCLA, and I think it was Andre McCarter was one of the guards. Greg, can't quite remember his last name, but anyway, these guys are pretty good. But none of them were clearly better than I was. As a matter of fact, I didn't think they were as good, if I can be so forward as to say that. And I thought, and this is during the game, my high school coach told me if I came out here, I'd play. I would have. I could beat both of these guys playing. And I thought that briefly during the game, and then I let that thought leave my mind and got to the task at hand. Anyway, we lose that game in triple overtime.
Wow.
Against UCLA. And people say it's one of the greatest college games ever still. We lose in triple overtime to UCLA, who go on to win the NCAA tournament again. Fast forward 2 years, I get drafted by the Portland Trailblazers, and Bill Walton is the center for the Portland Trailblazers. So I get a chance to play with him, where I could have played with him 2 years earlier in college. I probably won a few NCAA championships along, and we win the NBA title in 1977 that year, which would have been my senior year in college. And I was a starter on that team as we got into the finals. So that's how things happen. And the story of that is that always be confident about your own ability until somebody proves it otherwise. Always step forward with great intent, great purpose, and great positivity and great belief, because it starts with you. And that's the lesson my high school coach was trying to instill in me, which he did. And it took that experience for me to know, well, I don't care where it is or what it is. I'm going in with the thought in mind that I'm as good as anybody in here, if not better.
So,
and
Coach,
that's not being braggadocious. That's just where you should.
No, what's true is true. Yeah. Now, I want to backtrack a little bit to that. Even you played in the Pan America games too, and also the Intercontinental Cup. Tell the viewers a little bit about that before we get into that rookie season and winning that championship more in depth.
Okay. It's funny. My college coach, Don Donaher, who's a really good man and a solid coach, came to me and said, Johnny, would you like to try out for the Pan American team? I said, sure, I would love to. So he says, well, I know the people, David Gavitt, who was the head coach at Providence College at the time, was sort of running
the Big East too.
Yes, he was running that program at the time, and he knew him personally. So he put a call in on my behalf to get me an invitation to participate in the camp as a favor to the coach. And so I show up at the camp, and they have this meet and greet luncheon where the players are all there, and they're all introducing themselves. They're asking people to introduce themselves and say what school they came from. So you got John Lucas, Maryland, Quinn Buckner, Indiana. You got Phil Ford, North Carolina. You got all these notable guys that I've been watching all year when I got a chance to see them on television, and certainly have followed their careers. All Americans, great players, etc. So I get up, I go, Johnny Davis, baby. And these raised eyebrows, like, who the heck is that guy? So we get to the next day in practice, and I'm thinking, man, these guys, wow, I'm just so happy to be here. And so I said, I'm gonna just kind of ease my way into this and see, what's happening, what these people have. And so we go through the first practice, and I'm like, I don't have my full jets on yet. I'm just kind of feeling my way through this. And so I said, wow, after the first practice, I said, I hope they didn't have their jets on, because if they had theirs on, then this is going to be fun, So I said, okay, next practice, the second practice, I said, you know what? I'm gonna go all out tonight, and not lay back to see what everybody else is kind of doing, what they have. I'm gonna show you what I got and see if I can challenge you. Sure. And so we started the second practice. I'm blowing by guys, I'm dunking on guys. But anyway, I say to myself, and I called my brother. I said, I just saw all these notable guys, and I'm telling you, I'm going to make this team. because I didn't see anybody here that was head and shoulders above me.
Mhm.
And so I competed to that level. And when they announced the 12 for the Pan American team, they announced my name too. And so I said, now, and the way, the words of the common language, they had to put some respect on my name now. They had to say, hey, this guy can play. We know who he is now. You didn't know who I was coming in, but you're going to know who I am going out. And so that's how I played it. And I was fortunate enough to be on that team. And a very good team. Robert Parrish was on that team, Otis Birdsong, Ernie Brunfield, Joe Hassett. I mean, Leon Douglas. We just had a terrific team. And I was one of those players. And collectively, we had a good team, and we wound up winning the gold medal. And most of that team also played on the Intercontinental Cup team, which was conducted in Europe, and we also won gold medal there. So it was very interesting how that shaped out.
Yeah, I mean, that's really impressive. A lot of big names there, and then you going in there, not being recognized and just kicking some BUTT, we'll just say.
Yeah.
It really,
Well, yeah, I mean,
yeah.
when you watch people who have had the notoriety, who had the adoration, who have amassed a fan base from being on television, and you don't have that same exposure, that doesn't mean that they're necessarily better than you are.
Right.
What it means is they've had an opportunity that maybe you're yet to have. And I see that when I watch the Miami-Boston series now, where they're talking about the Miami players undrafted and how they're given the more acclaimed players of Boston the business, and they are. And the reason for that is names don't make players. Players make names. Yeah. And what I mean by that is just because your name is a certain thing doesn't mean that this guy who you don't know can't play. And everybody is seeing the results of that now.
We're going to be talking about Orlando in a minute. Just to go into Orlando, Marcus Jordan played at UCF for quite a while. I mean, Jordan's the last name. Michael is the father. His other son, I forget his first name, but he was at Illinois. Yeah. And, nothing bad about those dudes. They're good players, but they didn't live up to the father's last name. So as you said, the last name, the first name can be whatever the heck it is. Doesn't matter if you don't have the game. So.
That's right. And in fairness, how could they possibly live up to what their father accomplished? But I'm sure that they were good players in their own right, but they just weren't that. And so, but yeah, when a guy is a good player, eventually you'll see it. It may be a while, but if they stay after it, you see the evolution of certain players over the years, and you wonder, well, how that guy? Some guys just have such a tremendous will, and I look at a guy like Giannis Antetokounmpo. He's not the most talented guy. If you just sit back and say, "Wow, is he a great shooter?" No. Well, what is he great at? Passing? No. Defending? He's okay. But his determination, his heart, what he has inside, allows his will to not be deterred, not be defeated. It's what he wins on. And so you have to give him a lot of respect, not because he's the most talented guy, but because he's one of the more strong-willed guys that just gets it done that way. And kind of Jimmy Butler's a little bit like that too. Not the most. I can name you 10 guys with more talent, but I can't name 10 guys with his strong mentality and force.
Well, I'm going to bring that comment back to your roots in dealing with Darrell Armstrong. This is a guy that was the leader of that Hot and Hustle team, 99 to 2000. Throughout his time with the Magic, he was always on the ground, fighting for loose balls, playing hard defense, getting steals all over the place, blocking shots, even at, the point guard height. So that's a guy where, yeah, he might be not the top point guard in the league and scoring. He's not scoring 30 points a game, but that guy is a guy that I want on my team. I don't want the guy that's scoring 30 points a game. I want the guy that's acting like Darrell Armstrong on the court, giving people fits left and right.
No question about it. Darrell Armstrong was the heartbeat of that Heart and Hustle team. And a lot of people don't know his story. He was a guy who bounced around, in minor leagues, bounced around over in Europe, and actually was bagging groceries at a supermarket in his hometown. But he never lost belief in his dream that he could someday be an NBA player. And he stayed at it until that opportunity presented itself to him, and he took it and ran with it. I saw him and his leadership skills on full display one practice that we were having with the Orlando Magic. We were practicing, and the team was practicing lethargically. They weren't into it today. They were just going through the motions. The ball was being thrown all over the gym, shots, ill-advised shots being taken. We looked terrible, and we were practicing terrible. And Darrell Armstrong, who was on the start unit with the team, stopped the practice. He did, screaming at guys. I mean, is this how we're going to practice? This is why we're, how can we get there if guys don't commit to it? You guys come in here. I mean, he went up and down the line as if he were the head coach. And he was right. He was absolutely right. And it was so much more impactful coming from him rather than Doc Rivers, because the players expect the coaches, particularly the head coach, to be unhappy with the way things might be going in practice or a game. But this was one of them who was sitting in the locker room with them, and they knew his heart was pure, that he wasn't doing it for any other reason than to have them be successful as a team and grow as a unit. And he wanted to be a part of something that was positive that way. And I'll never forget his impact, things like that. And then he had guys on the team. People forget Ben Wallace was part of that team. Ben Wallace is in the Hall of Fame now. He anchored the world champion Detroit Pistons when they won the titles. It was Ben Wallace. Bo Outlaw, another guy like Darrell Armstrong, who bounced around in minor leagues. He couldn't shoot, so everybody thought he had no value. But he had tremendous value. He was a defender, a rebounder, fills the lanes, played strong inside, played great defense. And he knew his limitations, and he didn't try to force himself into outside shooting opportunities. So we had a lot of that. We just had John Amici. It was just a group of guys who were actually cast off from other teams and people who had bounced around. I think John Gabriel, who's the general manager, made 40 to 50 transactions that year. And it was supposed to have been a year that we were going to be, we were picked to maybe win 10 games by the experts. And we became 1 game shy. It was 1 game shy of making the playoffs on one shot. I'll never forget it. Chucky Atkins, the jump shot off the right-hand side of the court. And had he made that shot, we'd have won by 1. It was like, it hit the rim. It hit the rim and it bounced out. And I could see our playoff hopes going down the line like that with that off shot. It was just.
Chucky Atkins went to Detroit after, and
he did.
I believe beat the Magic in that
series. He did. Yeah. So a lot of those guys, Rob, were actually better than people thought. The better than the experts said that they were. And for that 1 year, every team we played, we used to just go at them unbelievably, because that's the way these guys were. They'd always been underdogs, and they had a chip on their shoulders, and they were ready against any opponent. Now, were we that talented? No. We got by on just what the words say: heart and hustle. We had it in to the nth degree.
Coach, you also go back to other guys on the team that you didn't even mention is Ron Mercer, who was a stud on the Celtics before he got to the Magic. Corey Maggette obviously played with the Clippers too. He was a stud over there. These were guys that, they were really good, drafted well, and maybe they were in the, at the end of their career, or maybe they had some issues with injuries and stuff, came to the Magic and really took it up to another level. And like you stated, Coach, just barely missed that playoffs. I want to go back and finish a couple questions on you before we dive into coaching with the Magic. Let's talk.
There was one player I need to mention that was part of that initial thrust of transactions that we did not keep, who became a Hall of Fame World Championship player. People forget about this one guy. You know who that was? It was Chauncey Billups.
Oh, yeah. But he didn't come in till the end, right?
Right. Well, he was part of a deal. We had him on our team for like a day or two.
Yeah.
Maybe a week. But I remember Doc Rivers said to me, and I didn't know Chauncey at the time. Yeah. He said, take a look at this guard, Chauncey Billups, and tell me what you think. And so
was this when he was on the Celtics, or
no? He had been, I believe, drafted by Denver, and part of a transaction somehow. He didn't start with Boston. He didn't start with Detroit. He started somewhere else, and we got him in a transaction. But I'll never forget, he got through a trade in one of John Gabriel's deals. Chauncey Billups was at one time a member of the Orlando Magic, and we traded him to Detroit. But anyway, so I watch him practice, I watch him shoot, I watch him play. And so I go back to give my report to Doc, and I say, hey, Doc, I know we're moving a lot of guys in and out. I think we ought to take a strong look at this guy. He's got something special about him. It was Chauncey Billups. Later became Mr. Big Shot, wins titles with the Pistons, so on and so forth. He was there. So, but anyway, I just wanted to throw that in because a lot of people don't realize that Chauncey Billups could have been a part of the Hard Hustle team.
Coach, I'm just looking that up, to fact check. I agree. I know he was on the Magic too. They don't even have that on the internet. They got the Celtics 97 and 98.
Well,
Toronto.
He never suited up.
Okay.
He never suited up for the Magic, not once.
No, but I saw that, when that happened.
Yeah. Look in the transactions. You'll find it.
Anyways, well, I'll look at that later. But no, I do trust you because I remember that happening. I don't remember the suit up stuff, but they didn't even put that on the roster.
He never suited up. He came. We saw. He left. It was one of those guys.
Oh boy. All right, so let's just go into this, just to finish off, speaking about your playing career before we move into the coaching career, talking about that rookie season. You tapped into this a little bit earlier on, Coach, at the beginning of our conversation here today. 1976, 1977, when you got in the league first year, winning that championship with the Blazers. You talked about playing with Bill Walton, but talk about how magical of a ride that season was for you to come in as a rookie and win a championship right away.
Oh, it was really incredible. We had some very, very good players, of course, anchored by Bill Walton, but we also had probably the best power forward in the league at that time, Maurice Lucas, who was a player that we acquired in the NBA dispersal draft. So he came over, I believe it was from St. Louis, to join Bill Walton on the front line. We also picked up Dave Twardzik out of that same ABA
Dave Twardzik was with the Magic, wasn't he, Coach?
He used to be the
general manager or something?
I think assistant general manager.
Something like
with Otis.
Right. Yes.
Yeah. So I think it was during that period of time, but he was on that championship team as well. And then we had a few veteran players, Herm Gilliam, Corky Calhoun, and some really good, just solid players. Larry Steele, Bobby Gross, who was part of the starting unit. Wally Walker, who later became part owner of the Seattle
Supersonics.
for a while they were there. But really, really good team. Started out, and here's another unknown fact. In the training camp of the 1976 Portland Trailblazers was also another Hall of Fame center who later showed up in Philadelphia. His name is Moses Malone.
Wow. Moses
Yes.
Malone was on your team then.
He was part of the
camp.
Portland Trailblazers in training camp. We got him in the ABA dispersal draft, and he was traded from the Blazers to the Houston Rockets out of training camp. Now, I will tell you this. The scrimmages and the one-on-one duels between Bill Walton and Moses Malone were incredible. Those two, it was, now they played two very different styles, but clearly the first unit versus the second unit was, they could have charged admission for that if people would have sold that place out just to watch the scrimmages, including Bill Walton and obviously Moses Malone, Maurice Lucas. And we had, Lionel Hollins was a fantastic guard, pleasure to play with him as well, a do everything type guard. So we had a really good team. We didn't know how good at the time, but I do recall one practice session where Coach Jack Ramsey, who was the head coach of the team, stopped the practice, pulled us all into the huddle and said, guys, if we play like this during the year, we can be champions at the end of it. And we all kind of look like, we're thinking, okay, that's just little coach speak, but it proved to be prophetic as we did, in fact, win the title at the end of the year. But the irony of all of that, Rob, is that after winning the championship and coming back next year, people don't know or have forgotten that we were 50-10 after 60 games in the following year after the championship, and Bill Walton gets hurt, and nothing was ever the same again. We lost to Seattle in the first round. Bill's medical issues continued to plague him throughout until he wound up in later years with the Boston Celtics as a sixth man. But and I say this, having seen most of the guys, I didn't see the Wilt Chamberlains and those guys, but the next group I did see. Bill Walton was arguably the best center that I'd seen all around. Now, Kareem obviously was a better scorer, and somebody else might have been a better this or better that. But in terms of the whole package, Bill Walton could do it all. He could score, he could shoot, he could defend, he rebounded, he ignited the fast break. And he was constantly talking the whole game. And I don't mean like people today talk about talking trash to one another. He wasn't talking trash. He was talking to us, his teammates. Push him left, Johnny. Push him left. I'm with you, Maurice. If it goes over the top, I'm there. Just constantly the whole game talking to you. So he gave you a confidence that no matter what was taking place, he was anchoring things in the back, and you could hear his voice directing the defense and the offense.
Yeah,
when he was there, such an amazing player, really a joy.
So you would put Bill Walton over Parrish. Now you played with both of these guys.
Yeah, they're quite different. Quite different. Right. Parrish was a heck of a center, and a very good offensive player, a good rebounder, shot blocker. Didn't have the passing skills of Bill Walton, but if you couldn't have Bill Walton and you wound up with Robert Parrish, you're still doing okay. He was that good. Yeah, he's really, I love playing with Robert Parrish. Again, played with him in the Pan American Games and the Intercontinental Cup team, but didn't get a chance to play with him in the NBA. But I have a lot of respect for him and how he played the game.
So let's go into the coaching aspect. We do have some audience questions about your career, Coach, but I want to go into that coaching aspect.
Sure.
Let's start with the Magic, okay? 2003, 2004 season, 1-10 start. Doc gets fired, and then you step into the helm. And, you know, we were talking about this, about the preseason, where there was a lot of losing in the preseason, even before the 1-10 start. Just bring us back to that time. Start, you know, if you want to start at the preseason and go into that 1-10 start, that would be great too.
Okay. Well, yeah, we started off in training camp, obviously, and we get into the preseason. And I don't recall the exact number of wins, but I think we only won one, maybe two games in preseason. And a lot of people, Rob, say that preseason is not important, you're just kind of filling things out, but it is important as it relates to building good habits, as it relates to building chemistry with your team, and building confidence that what you're doing works. Everyone who's not winning during those periods of time will say, well, when the regular season starts, then everything's going to be heightened and we're going to be fine. But there were some signs even then that maybe if we don't really get this sorted out, that this could be, you know, problematic going forward, which it was.
Yeah,
so
but
we
can I
started
stop you there, Coach, just to interrupt quickly, and I apologize, but I want to just jump in, though. So before the season starts, before even the losing in the preseason, you're looking at a team with basically it's T-Mac and, you know, I know Drew Gooden was on the team. Gordon Garachek was there. That was out of the Mike Miller trade. Juwan Howard, he was at the end of his career, let's be honest. And, you know, Pat Garrity was there. He was a solid role player, but that's kind of it. The Magic didn't have a center. There was Steven Russell was not the, go ahead.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, when you look at the talent of the team, it was not the most talented team to begin with. So again, and I said this earlier as we were talking, you must have talent to win basketball games. Now, coaching has its place and has an important part of that whole process. But I don't care who you are. If you don't have the talent, you're not going to be successful at a high level until you get that talent. And I always use the analogy, and we spoke on it earlier, of Greg Popovich, who is a Hall of Fame coach, a guy that I have the utmost respect for. I think he's one of the best coaches I've ever seen. Well, he really was great with Tim Duncan, David Robinson, Manu Ginobili, Tony Parker, guys like that. Now, fast forward to 2023, you know, he's not winning basketball games. So you're telling me Greg Popovich no longer knows how to coach? No, that's not true. What's different? Well, the guys he had are not David Robinson and Tim Duncan and Manu and Tony. You know, with all due respect, the guys he have now aren't at that championship level. So does that mean that, okay, you ask for Greg Popovich's head and say he can't coach? No, you have to be patient, replenish the stock, which they will, getting the #1 pick this year. And when you have talent, a good coach complements that and gives them direction, guidelines, discipline, etc., and formulates the team chemistry, which he does an incredible job with. I don't know him personally, but I've heard of some things that he does as far as team and family dinners. He creates a family atmosphere and allows his talent to flourish and get to know each other as people. So if a young coach wants to emulate a successful coach, he would be obviously one of the top ones. But having said that, when you take the talent away from Greg Popovich, and he's been privileged to coach, and give him some of the same Joes that some of these other coaches have to coach, you wouldn't even know who Greg Popovich was, because that's how this works. And so you look at, from an organizational standpoint, Rob, can you get the talent? Can you acquire the talent necessary to play at a high level, and can you sustain it year in and year out? You get certain teams that do, San Antonio being one, Lakers, Celtics, Miami, Chicago to a degree. They do that. They sustain year in and year out. And then you have another group of teams that just always seem to be looking for the answer. And those teams are always in the lottery every year. They never quite get it figured out, and they look for reasons that things don't happen for them. Well, you know, I thought we would have a shot at the #1 pick, and we wound up with the whatever pick it is. But then you got to go down and look at Miami, who didn't have any picks, and they get these undrafted players and they develop them, and then all of a sudden they're you know, a 1-game shot now of going to the finals. Well, what's the difference? Well, the difference is in the organization itself. You know, how are these players developed? Who's doing what? Why are they doing it? You know, it makes sense. They have a system that they can rely on, a blueprint for success that they have shown works, and so they have sustainability. With some of the also rans, they wind up in the lottery. I don't have to name them. You know who they are. They're there every year, and every year it's the same story. You know, they just don't have enough. But why not? You know, well, we didn't have a high draft pick. Well, Miami didn't either. What's the difference? You know? So anyway.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just saying that's what happens a lot. And so with a guy like you know, again, Popovich and San Antonio, when they draft, they draft wisely. When they don't draft, they acquire talent that they develop in-house, and pretty soon they trust those players because they've got their handprint on them.
Well, Coach, I just want to go. So, you know, just going back to the question. So the preseason, obviously, it wasn't a good start. Then it's 1-10. But my thing is, even to go back into that time, do you feel like, and you know, I'm hoping to not get too much political speech out of this, but you're retired, so I hope you'll give me an honest opinion on this. But just to be with the talk about the Magic. So, you know, we have the 99-2000 Hot and Hustle team. Again, like you said, it was a bounce away from making the playoffs. Next year, you get T-Mac and Grant Hill. Obviously, Grant was injured. We can talk about that in just a moment. But T-Mac, became one of the top players, in the NBA at the time. If he didn't have those back injuries, he would have been somebody on the Jordan level. He was at one time before those injuries. But then, after the 99-2000 team, you go into the playoffs against Milwaukee. Obviously, you don't get out of the first round. Then it's Charlotte with Baron Davis and David Wesley. You can't win that series. Then you go to Detroit. Obviously, you got that Ben Wallace group, Chauncey Billups, Rip Hamilton, and you're up 3-0, and then they come back and win it. Do you think it's not, again, T-Mac or the coaching staff's fault? It's the Magic's fault, because every year there was a depletion of players. Darrell Armstrong, Mike Miller, Ben Wallace, all these guys that end up being really good players for other teams, they're getting pushed out by Magic management. So is it the coaching staff? Is it the players? Is it the management? What is going on here? Is it that they say, hey, we gave Doc, Johnny Davis, and the rest of the crew, 4 or 5 years to get this under control. They lost 3 times in the first round. Then you start off 1-10. We got to get rid of these guys. They're not doing it. Whose fault is it?
Well, there's enough blame to go around. And everything always starts.
Coach, I'm leaning toward it's the organization, because they're depleting talent every year.
It starts at the top. And you have to have the not just the vision, you also have to have the strategy to execute the vision. And when you get top players, you have to complement those players with others who will now raise up the entire program. And you have to ascertain who's a keeper and who you need to move away from, and who you need to acquire. And I think over the years, just watching, and I'll just refer back to our years, getting Tracy McGrady, acquiring Grant Hill with an outside shot at Tim Duncan, if you remember that year.
Yeah, so what happened? Hold on, let's stop there. So Tracy McGrady goes on ESPN a couple of times. Grant Hill talks about this on many different podcasts and TV shows, that there was that chance of getting Tim Duncan. Apparently, him and T-Mac talked about that at this time in 2000, that all those three guys were going to come to Orlando. I mean, you talk about a superstar team. That's a team that could win 2-3 championships. With that said, there was the talk that Doc wouldn't let Tim Duncan's girlfriend at the time on the plane. Now that's regular. You know, I mean, you've been on the NBA planes. I haven't been. That's like regular play now on the planes, that you can let the girlfriend or the wife on the planes. Doc wouldn't allow that. Tim Duncan, maybe it was the wife, maybe it wasn't Tim. Well, I mean, the girlfriend rather at the time, said, hey, listen, we're not going to do this. I want to go with you. And that went kaput. You were with Doc for quite a few years. You know his mindset. You know his thinking. Maybe you were in the room when this happened. I don't know. What was the thinking behind all this? Was that true or false?
Well, it's the same story that I heard. I wasn't there in terms of when the actual decision was made, like, no. But yeah, there was a rule in place that the family did not travel on the team plane.
Was this a Doc Rivers rule, or was this just in some sort of different NBA rule? What was?
Well, no, it was a rule that we put in place.
Okay.
Because we didn't want to open that up to, well, you let so-and-so on the plane, why can't my so-and-so? So you get into, rather than having to pick and choose who can come on the plane and who can't, which can foster ill will and bad feelings. You just didn't let anybody other than the team and those who were supposed to be on the plane ride on the plane. So it wasn't like it was a rule that was, absurd or ridiculous. It wasn't.
Yeah.
It was a rule that put in place the control of your environment as it relates to who was in your traveling party and who wasn't. Now, if somebody really wanted someone to wind up in the same city, then there are planes that go to that city. You make those arrangements and away you go. But in this case, because this is what, again, Popovich was allowing this to happen in San Antonio, where the wives or girlfriends, or I don't know exactly how he set it up, but from what I understand, you could get someone on the plane if they were close to you. Let's put it that way. Well, if I'm recalling this perfectly because Doc and I talked about it, and he said to me, he says, "Hey, I just got a call from Chris, that's his wife, and Chris said, you can forget about Duncan, he's not coming." I said, well, why? He said, because of the rule of not allowing wives to travel on the same plane. And so fast forward, she then says, what I understand, that they should stay in San Antonio, and that's what they did. So did Doc have a chance to say, well, look, we can reevaluate these rules and maybe we can come to some sort of agreement? I don't think it was just that. I think there may have been some other things involved. What, I don't know. But it is something that I did hear. And yes, we did have that rule, but I did not hear I did not hear Doc not one time say, we can't to get this kind of championship caliber team, there may be things we have to adjust. I did not hear him say he would not. And Doc's a pretty player-friendly guy. I mean, coming from the ranks himself.
Yeah.
And I know he would not allow, not staying with some rule about Tim Duncan and his girlfriend flying on the plane together would allow him to prevent Tim Duncan from showing up in a Magic uniform. So no, I think it's been embellished quite a bit. But yes, to answer your question, the rule was there, and yes, he did get a call from his wife saying she didn't think so, because when she said, "Well, I go," this is Tim's girlfriend, "I go on all the road trips with Tim," and Chris says to her reportedly, "Well, no, your family members aren't allowed to go on the team plane." The look that she got, I guess at that point, said, "Well, forget about Tim, man." But Chris, who's a basketball lifer wife, been with Doc Rivers since the Marquette days when he was a player. She's also savvy enough, smart enough not to make decisions and say things that would prevent something that we organizationally really wanted to happen. She wouldn't say. She's smarter than that. She would just say, "Well, that's been a rule." She would couch it in a different way. That not like she's making a decision, or, "Oh no, your wife can't travel with the team." No, I don't think she's much smarter than that, and she's been around. She knows how this works, and she would have probably said something, if I can paraphrase here. Well, families haven't been allowed to travel previously, but then every year is different. So maybe that's something that can be a conversation. I can see her saying something like that.
Well, thanks for correcting the record on that, because I've heard that story on TV multiple times, and it does make you think about what could have been if that happened. Obviously,
well, you know what, Rob, it's like that real small fish someone caught, but by the time the story's told 10 times, it's a whale they caught.
Yeah. All right. Well, at least we know where the game, as far as that goes, at least we know about the story in general, so we can put that to rest. I just want to go back to the season. So, we talked a little bit about that season, which you started. Obviously, Doc gets fired, you jump in. And just to put an exclamation point on that story of the season, it was a bad season, but you were 20-51. Obviously, Doc was 1-10 to start the year, 21 wins in general. With that said, T-Mac did score 62 points in one game in that year. Obviously, you were coaching that game. If you remember a little bit about that, if you could tell the audience about that, because it was a hell of a game. He probably could have scored 70 some odd points. He missed a couple of free throws, I believe, in that game. Watching back to it.
Yeah, well, first, let me say this about T-Mac. What an amazing scorer. This guy was incredible. A talent, a very unique talent. Not many people as talented as Tracy McGrady on the basketball court. He was that guy. He was that good. And in his prime, and I've said this, and people raise their eyebrows when I say it, but and I've watched and seen both of these guys closely. T-Mac was a better scorer than Kobe Bryant.
Yeah.
Period. No one can argue that. The difference was Kobe's motor stayed on all the time, where T-Mac at times, because the game was so easy for him, against certain players, he could score 30 and not even give it any thought. I mean, he was that good that against a real good defender who might make him work, maybe he had to work somewhat. But most of the people guarding him at that point in his career didn't have an answer for him. He could go inside, outside, post up, he could pass, run, jump, shoot, block. When you talk, it had the size. So when you talk about the prototypical basketball person, you're talking about Tracy McGrady. And had he been driven just a bit more, where the, you know, the force that was needed, there's no telling what he could have accomplished, because he was that good. And still, with all of that, and he would be on cruise some games. I can remember when we first got Tracy, he wouldn't warm up. He'd be in the training room, laying on the table, half asleep before the game, resting. I guess some might call it today meditation. I called it taking a nap. That's what I called it. So Rob, I'm thinking to myself, I gotta somehow get this guy out here to warm up so he's engaged in the game from the very beginning, as opposed to waking up through as the game is in progress. So I started sending ball boys back to the training room where Tracy was taking a nap, and saying to the ball boy, all right, at a certain time, like 15 minutes before I needed him on the floor, I would send a ball boy and say, just go to Tracy McGrady. He's laying on the training table in the locker room, and tell him Coach Davis is outside waiting for him on the floor. So the first messenger would go out and take that to Tracy. All right. So 5 minutes later, I sent another one, different ball boy. Hey, come here. I called ball boy. I need you to go into the locker room, tell Tracy McGrady, Coach Davis is still waiting for him out on the floor. All right. So he go in and he come back. I said, what did he say? He said, he just looked at me, he didn't say anything. Then I send the third one, and I tell him, tell Tracy McGrady, Coach Davis is still waiting on the floor for him, and he's coming next himself to get you. All right. So then I see Tracy come out. He come through the tunnel, come out to the floor. He be smiling, because he said, Coach, you're interrupting my nap. You send all these guys, they keep coming back talking about. I said, come on, let's get to work. And he never, ever, to his credit, once he got on the floor, you got him started, he would give you work. He really would. And he wanted to be the best player. And we would talk all the time and have these conversations. And I would say, Tracy, there's no one out here in this league better than you. I said, but you got to show it every night. If you don't show, if you and I are the only ones who know this, then it doesn't count. I said, you got to show it to everybody. And he soon did. And unfortunately, he didn't have a lot of help with the other pieces around him, but he could play, man. And I still today don't see any. Probably the closest might be Jason Tatum, but even Jason Tatum's not the scorer Tracy McGrady, with all due respect. No way. No way.
Yeah, but he also had the back issues too, which is a big problem. Yeah.
He did. He had injuries that he was dealing with at the time, and unfortunately, I think that cost him some. But even when he left Orlando and went to Houston, still playing at a very, very high level, and people question whether or not he should be in the Hall of Fame. He should be. His body of work says so, and I really enjoyed coaching him, both as an assistant in terms of his development and also as a head coach. I just wish we'd have had more help around him. And here's where you alluded to this earlier. The front office had a decision to make. Do we build around Tracy McGrady, or do we take Tracy McGrady and get 3 to 4 more pieces and build around that, and build around those new players? And obviously, we made the decision to bring in 3 to 4 new players, because on our roster, at that time, the only one with real value was Tracy McGrady. Drew Gooden had some value, but obviously not quite as high as Tracy and the others, Gordon, Yurichek, and those others were good players, role players, but none of those players would have started for any other team.
I want you just to talk about these guys behind the scenes, just dealing specifically with the Magic right now, Tracy McGrady and Grant Hill. I know you just spoke about some stories about Tracy and stuff. You know, as fans, you know, myself and people listening, we see these guys and, you know, we try to make assumptions in our mind of, are these guys really good-natured guys? Do they play like you know, it's like an actor, an actress on TV. Do they just play that role on TV for the basketball, but in real life, they're jerks? You know, talk about guys. I know you spoke a little bit about Grant Hill off the air, but the people didn't hear that. So speak about Grant Hill and T-Mac on the air with me right now and for people that are listening, and how they were behind the scenes. Were they really, you know, were they funny? Were they intelligent? You know, what was it about these guys?
Well, and I'll start with Tracy since we were talking about him.
Sure.
Tracy was a fun-loving guy, mainly an introvert, kind of kept himself, had a small circle, but an engaging guy. Not one of those guys that you figure, you know what, I wouldn't walk across the street to shake that guy's hand. He wasn't one of those kind of guys. He was really fun to be around. You know, but more of a closely, he held himself close, didn't get too far out with a lot of people, wasn't a guy that needed a lot of people hanging around him. He wasn't that.
So there weren't these, because we see some of these celebrities and NBA players, NFL players, they got huge entourages.
Yeah, no, his circle was small.
Okay.
And he didn't have a whole lot of people waiting on him, you know, and like you see some guys now, they got 12 people with them. Like, what are these guys doing with what's their purpose?
Those guys are looking for that cash. That's what those guys are looking for. I'll tell you.
But anyway, he didn't have that, and really just in my opinion, just a super nice guy. The only thing I would say in regards to Tracy is that he was a laid back sort of guy, and he didn't get overly high or overly low. He was just kind of even and wasn't an emotional guy at all. And that to me was what, again, the difference. If he could have just somehow when he came across those lines, been engaged totally for 48 minutes at a high level, then you would have seen another person, because when he got to that level as a player, that's when he was getting 45 and 50 and easy 30. But there were some nights where, he would get 30, 32, 33, 35 points. And I knew, and he knew, and people watching knew, he didn't even work that hard to do this. Now people say, well, how can you get that many points when you're not working hard? That's the beauty of Tracy McGrady. He could do that half asleep.
Do you feel like this as a guy that coached him, Coach? Do you feel like that is because he was a natural athlete? He wasn't just good at basketball. He was great at baseball also. He actually, I think, played minor league for like fun. I don't know. It was a couple of years back. And then he also played football, I believe, in high school. This guy was a natural athlete. He wasn't just a one-sport phenom. So maybe that was the issue, maybe, that he was just naturally gifted at all these sports. I don't know. I'm just trying to think off the top.
It's hard. It's hard to pinpoint it. He was a gifted athlete. He could do a lot of things, and the game of basketball was easy for him. And it's almost human nature that when something's really just easy for you, the guy gets 30 points and he's really not sweating that hard. Now, he also, I have to say this, he did work at the game, but he didn't play the game as if it was the last game he would ever play, like a Kobe Bryant did. And I'm saying that as talented as he was, he could get 30, 35 in a night, and he's just playing the game. But if he was being forceful in a game, he could get 60. He could have gotten some nights 70. He was that good. But he wasn't motivated by that per se. That's not to say he didn't have a lot of pride. He did. And if somebody was trying to go at him in a certain way, it didn't take him long to figure out, well, okay, this is more of a personal thing. And he would show the guy in 4, 5, 6 possessions, this is not something you want, for me to be engaged to this level. And I wish I could have found a way to have him get at that next level every game, not just 41 games, but 82. Bring that same force. Now he did in the playoffs. He did bring next level. He did, but the NBA season is a long season, and sometimes guys, they'll compete, but they got another gear they could go to, and he had another gear. His normal gear, Rob, was better than most people's high gear. That's how talented he was. Like, these guys are all out. He's on cruise control, and he got 35, 8, and 7. And he was actually a very good passer. He could play the whole game. And when he wanted to be, he could have been an outstanding defender. He had the tools to make the all defensive team. Think about it. The guy's 6'8", long, tall, athletics, and stronger than you would think. There was nothing in basketball that Tracy McGrady couldn't do. Nothing. It was up to him. Now, you asked about Grant Hill. Grant Hill is, to me, one of the most underrated players that's ever played. And I say that he's another guy. He could do everything. And when you speak about off the court, Grant Hill is the kind of guy that most men who have daughters will want their daughters to marry. He's that kind of guy. Just a solid, honest, disciplined guy who cares about other people. And again, we talked about it earlier. If he should run for any office, governor, senator, mayor, police chief, fire department, if you see Grant Hill's name on it, vote for Grant Hill, because he will do exactly as he says he will, and you can go to sleep with that. He is truly a smart, thoughtful, disciplined guy who's also a fun-loving guy. I watch him sometimes. He's doing these singing with his wife on YouTube. His wife, by the way, is a Grammy Award singer. And he's playing the piano at times for her. Very talented player. But he is a guy that he's just a guy, and now he's he's in control of the U.S. Basketball Olympic Committee, the basketball side of it. He's the top guy to replace Jerry Colangelo, and they got it right. He's the guy who should do it. He's as good as advertised and better. He's not one that will disappoint you. His effort's going to be the same. It's going to be high level, no matter what it is. He's a guy that will get up early and stay up late until it's done. And so I can't speak highly enough about him. And whatever arena you put him in, if it's the sports arena, the political arena, whatever it is, you'll see he's top of the class in everything. So
So you're just saying, Coach, that after Darrell Armstrong left the Magic, the real captains of the team, it wasn't T-Mac. The go-to guys were Grant Hill and also Pat Garrity.
those were the two who were the captains of those teams. Now, you got to understand, we had some players who were challenging, if you will. Steve Francis, Kelvin Cato, who came over along with Cuttino Mobley. And I will also say this to you, on that team, Cuttino Mobley was quite impactful. And people ask me a lot about that particular year, and I go into the details of it. Being relieved of my responsibilities with 18 games to go, and we were sitting in the 8th spot of the playoffs, and that had never happened before to an NBA coach, nor since. But I told you I had a handshake agreement with John, not John Gabriel, but
John Weisbrod.
John Weisbrod, excuse me.
Yeah.
That if we made the playoffs, I would get a new contract. If we didn't, then he would go in a different direction. We shook hands on that. It wasn't in writing, but to me, a gentleman's agreement, your word and your handshake is your bond. Well, with 18 games to go, he came in and told me he was going in a different direction. When the deal was, if we made the playoffs, then obviously I would get another deal. Well, we were in the 8th spot when he came in and relieved me of my duties with 18 games to go. So was that fair? No, that's not fair. Come on, let's be for real about it. That's just not, But it happened, and you deal with what happens. But it was really an interesting time. But I will say this: looking back on that year, the worst trade that was made that impacted, when I say worst, I'm talking about a movement within the team that had serious implications to it, that has never really been talked about, was trading Cuttino Mobley for Doug
Christie. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah,
that should not have happened. And Cuttino was going into being a free agent at the end of the year, and so he was going to be up for a considerable raise. I underestimated how impactful Cuttino Mobley was to that team. When Cuttino was traded in the middle of the year we were in Boston when he got traded. The reaction from Steve Francis was unbelievable. And the team, he was the most popular player on the team and a leader in his own right. And when we lost him, 17 points a game went out the door. And Doug Christie, no offense to Doug Christie, Doug's a great guy, I love him, but he wasn't Cuttino Mobley, and he wasn't the Doug Christie that he used to be. Yeah. And so that changed the dynamics of the team, and we fell from 5th to 8th. And I think, looking back, if I knew then what I know now, because we all have that looking glass mirror that goes backwards. When that came up, I would have fought tooth and nail to keep Cuttino on that Magic roster because he was that important to it. So to me, that was the move that really began the spiral for us because he actually had such a great relationship with Steve Francis that he could sort of keep Stevie Francis evened out and playing, and Cuttino was about winning the game. He wasn't about gathering his stats and stuff of that nature. I have a lot of respect for Cuttino Mobley, and I do think had he not have been traded from the Orlando Magic that year, I may still be coaching today.